watching After Effects. After Effects is the industry standard in animation and special effects. So you're learning some skills that could get you a job in film and television, as well as working in fields for web design. There's more and more. There's animation in web design, and even graphic design. Okay, so here I am in After Effects. I'm gonna open the file that I started yesterday. So I'm just gonna go File, Open Project, and I put it in my folder for the class. There's it's an After Effects project file that opens up into After Effects. The icon looks like this. I named it Animated Header. I'm just gonna click Open, and here it is. So what it is it's just my Illustrator file so far that I imported into my After Effects project. And remember, when I imported my Illustrator file, to get it here, I went File, Import File, or Command I on a Mac, or Control I on Windows. And then I selected my header that I created, the one that I set up for animation, which means I separated the different objects that I want to be able to move as separate layers to animate them separately. I needed to set that up ahead of time on my header for animation. Actually, there's one thing I forgot to do. I forgot to set up the color mode in Illustrator to be set up for the screen. It might be fine, it might not matter, because everything gets set up for the screen when it gets to After Effects, but I should probably go through that. But all I did was, after I went to import, I selected my Illustrator file, and remember, I import for the Import As option. What did I do? Which one did I select? Did I do footage, composition, retain layer sizes, or composition? Which one was it? You guys remember?
Second one.
Right, composition, retain layer sizes. That's the correct choice. So then I clicked open. I'm going to cancel because I already did this. And here I have it. And it came in as a composition. And the composition, when you double click on it, it opens up onto the timeline with all of the layers, the way that I named them in Illustrator as separate layers. I can turn things off and on by clicking the eyeball switches, the visibility switches, in other words, off and on, to see what's on each layer. And you also have a folder that comes in with all the layers as individual items that could be also worked with, but you don't need this folder generally. That's just there because it's connected. All the layers are connected to the composition, which is open on the timeline, and the image that's displayed is displaying in the composition panel window, which is like the screen displaying the artwork. And right now it's set to 100%. I could click the drop down here and choose fit up to 100% so that I can see everything in my artboard here. And then let me just launch Illustrator. You can make changes to the file in Illustrator to some extent. There are some changes that don't work very well, but mostly, like if you just want to change the positioning, or if you want to change the color of something, or alter the artwork a little bit here and there, you can do that in Illustrator. So I'm going to open up the one that I've imported to After Effects, the header for animation, and if I wanted to make changes on anything, I could, and then it would update. So if I click this, for example, and I decide, oh, I want to make this swirl yellow, so I make it, well, no, let me make it purple there. So I made that swirl purple, and then I go File, Save, and then I go into After Effects, and it should update at some point. Let's see. Come on. I thought it would update, but maybe it's not. Let's see. Eventually it should update. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Unless this is the right one. Let's see. Let's see what layer that was on. Did I not save it? Let me make sure I saved it. File, save, yeah, saved. And this is here on, oh, this is on Dark Spirals. So Dark Spirals, oh, there, now it updated. It just took a little time, but yeah, now, see, did you see how it turned purple? So they're connected, they're linked. So if I go back and I change my mind again and I say, no, I don't want it to be purple, I want it to be this green color, and save, then it will update in After Effects. Or, well, maybe not this green, maybe I want it to be that color. File, save. So then it will update back. Another thing that you might want to do when you're in Illustrator is make sure that the color mode is set to RGB. So if I go to, because right now, oh, it is set to RGB, never mind. Because I guess how did I do that? When I set up my document, I set it up for the screen. I set it up as a document for the web. So when you're designing artwork that's purely for the screen, for the web or mobile devices, or for film and television, the color mode is going to be set up for RGB, because the colors that you choose are gonna just look better on the screen when your color mode is in RGB, as opposed to the color mode for printing, which is CMYK. So I was just checking that I had it on RGB, which I do, so I'm good. Alright, so we're ready to animate. And I have provided you with the animation steps you can get on Canvas if you don't have them already. And I'm gonna pull them up here on that because I already saved them to my folder for the class. In the folder that's called For Animated Promo, you'll find the animation steps. It's good to have those handy because that's gonna start to implant the logic of animation in After Effects into your mind, into your brains. So the first step, position your playhead at the beginning of the animation, and that's not necessarily the beginning of the timeline, but it's wherever you want to begin a particular move or particular animation of a property. So I could put the playhead at the very beginning of the timeline, or I could go in a little ways and start at a certain point in the timeline, and I just drag the playhead. See, I'm dragging the playhead right now, and as I'm dragging the playhead, I'm moving into the timeline a certain duration of time. And you'll notice that the time code is counting up, it's like a counter here, counting up frame by frame. Each frame has its own its very own number, like an address for each frame of video, and depending on the frame rate that you set, the number at the end is going to count up to a certain number of frames, and then and then at a certain point, then we're going to move into seconds, and then the seconds are going to start counting up. So it looks like this timeline is set for our video standards, the technology that's developed in the United States, the TVs and the cameras that are developed in the United States go by a certain record a certain frame rate, which generally is approximately 30 frames a second. To be exact, it's 29.97 frames per second because the frame rate fluctuates. If you're creating a video that's purely for the web, you might want to change your frame rate to be a lower frame rate, which you can do in your composition settings under composition settings, or you can use Command K if you're on a Mac or Control K if you're on Windows to get into the settings. And the frame rate here is set up as the standard frame rate, but I could choose the drop down here and choose a lower frame rate. It's gonna look maybe a little choppier, not as smooth with a lower frame rate, but it's gonna render faster. It's gonna play nicely. If you plan on making a GIF animation, for example, for WordPress, you're gonna need to lower the frame rate because in order to get it to render into a GIF animation, we're gonna need to go into Photoshop, and if your frame rate's too high, it's just not going to be able to render. It's just going to crash the system. So I recommend for this type of animation that we're going to be making that you go to frame rate and you choose probably 12 frames per second. So let's try that one and then say okay. So that's good for 12 frames per second is good for a simple GIF animation, which is what we're going to make for WordPress. So now, as I move the playhead forward, it's going to be counting up 12 frames per second. So every time we reach 12, a second is counted. So then the frames count up, and then the seconds count up, and then to the left of that, what do you think? First from going from right to left, we see frames, then we see seconds, then what do we see counting up? When we get up to 60 seconds, what do we get next? Counting up to the first minute, right? And then 60 minutes, we get up to the first hour. So the first number here is the hours, then we have minutes, then we have seconds, then we have frames. So that's how you read time code. That's the standard way to count up video frames and label video frames. So anyway, we want to follow these steps. So I'm going to put my playhead somewhere and notice the time code. So I'll just put my playhead at 11 frames. Okay, I just found a random place in my timeline. And then I decide, okay, that's where I want to start. So I put my playhead there. That's the first step. Position your playhead at the beginning of where you want to animate. And then step 2, position your object where you want it to start, and or program the values of the property as you want the animation to begin. And I said that right now I'm demonstrating how to animate position. So that's the property that I'm animating or keyframing. So the property value of position, you see that right here in the coordinate numbers, the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. So let's say I want it to start off screen. I want this logo to start off screen. In order to get it to start off screen, I could either just drag on this logo flower, and see as I'm dragging it around, see the numbers, the property values are changing. So I could drag it off screen like that, or I could just adjust the numbers by hovering over the numbers and dragging side to side to move. I'm dragging side to side on the X value, I'm dragging side to side on the Y value. So the Y axis is moving the flower up and down. The X axis moves the flower side to side. I can move it out like that by just adjusting those property values. Okay, so we get the property values the way we want them. That's step 2. Then step 3 is you click the stopwatch to initialize the animation. So that creates the first keyframe, which holds that property value stored in the keyframe. So what do I mean by stopwatch? See this little guy right here that's next to the word position? That's what we call the stopwatch. When you click on it, you'll see hands of a clock appear inside of it. So you click on that, and now it's initialized keyframing or animation, and it's planted the first keyframe storing the data of the X and Y coordinate values for position into that keyframe. Okay? The next step, step 4, is then we're going to move the playhead to the duration of time that we want an animation to happen of that property. So move the playhead to the duration of the animation of that property. So how long do we want it to take to move from point A to point B, in other words? So here I am at 11 frames. I'm going to drag my playhead forward. Now I'm at 111. So that means I'm at 1 second and 11 frames. So that's a second, right? From 11 frames to 111. Hey, that's my son's birthday, 111.
Hello? Hello?
Hello. You're okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was testing my mic because it didn't seem to be coming through.
Oh,
I have
okay.
a question.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering on the movement of the items. Can you actually stretch things?
Yeah, there's this column here called stretch, which we can get into in a little bit, but I want to get down the basics first, and then we'll get into the fancy stuff.
Oh, yeah, I didn't notice that. Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I moved the playhead to the duration of time I want it to take for a change to happen. So then step 5, after we do that, is to change the value of the property that you want to animate. So here's my playhead at exactly 1 second time interval here. I just kind of randomly picked that. It doesn't have to be 1 second. It can be shorter or longer. But we'll see how it looks, how it moves, how fast it looks like it's going to be moving at 1 second from the previous keyframe to the next keyframe, which is about to appear as soon as I make a change to my property value, which is our last step here, is to make a change to the property value, which you could make the change by I could just drag the flower to where I want it to be, or I could adjust the numbers, make changes to the property values to X and to Y. So see how I did that? I dragged down the numbers to make a change, and then automatically a second keyframe appears because I made a change to the numbers. So I position it this way by dragging on the numbers, or just by dragging on the flower. And then I can move my playhead back and see what that's going to look like, how it comes in. So it just kind of pops in there. And then if I wanted to hold it in place for a duration of time and then move it out later, I could do that. So I could determine how long do I want it to sit there and wait. Let's say I wanted to wait until this point here. So then I would just add a keyframe. So there's this button here that's the add or remove keyframe button. You can just click on, and that adds a keyframe that matches the same property values as the previous keyframe. So it creates a hold in time, so that from this keyframe to this keyframe, nothing is happening. It's just holding that position. But then if I decide, okay, then next I want the flower to move out again and move somewhere else, then I can move my playhead a duration of time forward and then make a change. So I could just make a change by dragging it out or adjusting the property values down here at the numbers. So let's say I just drag it out, and now it's left the stage. So it enters the stage, it sits there looking pretty for a while, and then it exits. But position isn't the only property I could keyframe. What are our transform properties? Do you remember them? There's an acronym to remember them. It's parts, P-A-R-T-S. And if you close up the layer and open it again, it'll reveal all the transform properties that we have. So let's start with position. I just keyframed. Then there's anchor point. You don't have to keyframe all of them. You could leave some of them at constant values if you want. Scale, rotation, opacity. So you can have fun with all of these, with any of these if you want to animate any of them. So let's say I want to have it scale. That could be a fun one. And I don't like to look at all my properties all at once. I like to just bring up one at a time. So that's why we remember our acronym parts, P-A-R-T-S, because all you have to do is tap a key on the keyboard to bring up just properties one at a time, and everything is much more compact and easy to work with, and just feng shui, because you don't want to get overwhelmed looking at too much at any one given time. When you flip open the layer, everything shows. When you close the layer, everything's hidden. So I can press P to bring up position. If I want to bring up more than one, I use the shift key. And if I want to bring up scale also, what do I press? Anyone know? Shift S. Shift S. If I want to hide just position, I could hide it with Shift P. If I want to bring up rotation in addition to scale, what do I press? I can't hear you. What do you think? If I want to bring up rotation in addition to scale, what should I press? Are you guys with me?
Shift R.
Excellent. Perfect. Exactly. Shift R. Shift P. So I can just bring up the ones I want and then hide ones I don't want. So if I want to hide R, Shift R. If I want to just bring up one and override the rest, like let's say I just want scale, I just press S. Oh, actually S hit everything. Press S one more time, and now it's just scale. Okay, so then I can just focus on scale. But actually, I do like to see what I've done already, so I'm going to do Shift P. So I can see where my position keyframes are already, and then I can add some scaling keyframes. So let's say in the middle, in between position somewhere, I want to do some fun kind of scaling. And I could line up my playhead with an existing keyframe, like on position, by using the arrow keys. You can use the arrow keys here to jump to specific, not the arrow keys, sorry, I mean these arrow buttons that are around the keyframe here. The keyframe button, and this keyframe button is actually an add remove keyframe button, so I can move my playhead somewhere, and like you saw before, I can click this button to add a keyframe, but when I'm on top of a keyframe, I can also click this button again to remove a keyframe, the diamond shaped button, and then I can use these arrows to jump my playhead to and from keyframes. So I could go exactly to this keyframe, and then maybe I decide I want to start my scaling right there. So I begin my scaling keyframing where lining up with this keyframe here. So I'm gonna just click the stopwatch to start, just like before. And then I'm gonna move my playhead forward a duration of time that I want it to take to scale this, and then I might scale it up bigger. And then I might move my playhead forward again and then scale it down smaller, and then move my playhead forward again and scale it bigger again, and then forward again and go smaller, and just see what that looks like. So it's just scaling like that. I could keep going because that's kind of fun. It's kind of like fun to see how it's moving, growing and shrinking, and then so now it's scaling, so it's doing stuff while it's sitting there. It's not just sitting there, and then it moves off. Okay, what about rotation? I hear some background sound. Where's that background sound coming from? Whoever has background sound, would you please mute? Here's the, unless it's from, sorry, maybe it's from my next door neighbors. I apologize for that. Okay, it's just, okay. Anyway, so I'm gonna do Shift R and brought up rotation now. Let's see how rotation works. So with rotation, you see that the numbers for rotation, you have a certain number of times you can set it to rotate, and you can also set the angle. See, so you could just adjust on the angle, but if you want it to go all the way around a few times, you can set the number of times you want it to go. But I'm going to make the angle 0 to start with. So I click on the number and I could type over the highlighted number. And usually with rotation, you'll start with everything at 0 and you click the stopwatch to start. And this is following the same steps, right? You position your playhead where you want to start. You set your property how you want it to be. So for rotation, I want it to be at 0. That's step 2. And step 3, click the stopwatch to initialize animation. So I did that. I did all those 3 steps really quick. You're gonna start to just know these steps by heart. It's gonna start to make sense. And then the next step is, after you click the stopwatch, move the playhead a duration of time. So then I choose how long do I want it to be spinning for. Maybe I want it to line up with this position keyframe right here, so I could use the arrow on my position property. And then I want it to rotate. Let's say I want it to spin 5 times. So I can click the number of times and just type 5. And then press return. So now an end keyframe is created, and if you look at the steps, that was after I moved the playhead a duration, then I changed the value and a new keyframe appears. Anytime you change the value, a property value, then a new keyframe automatically appears and you have created animation. So now we have the flower comes in, it grows bigger and smaller, pulsating, and it's rotating. So let's play that. I'm going to press the space bar to preview that. Ooh, that's fun. And then it leaves. All right. Any questions about that so far? You can also use there's a preview panel here. I rarely use it because I always use the space bar, because the space bar is what's set to be my preview button, to my play or stop button, but you can also use the play or stop control here on the preview panel. Play and stop by clicking on play and stop here. But I like the space bar. I'm just used to using the space bar to play and stop. So you see the workflow, you're building your animation along your timeline, you're keyframing along your timeline and watching the elements unfold. Now, I've been going through the steps here in a way that is working forward, where I start my playhead at a certain beginning point, and I set my keyframes up as I want my property values to begin, and then I move the playhead forward, and then I make a change, and then there's a transition that happens that creates the animation from one keyframe to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and so on, right? But I think for a logo animation, it works best if you actually work backwards. It's actually easier to work backwards because you spent the time to do the layout. You don't want to take it all apart and then figure out how to put it back together again. You're like, was the flower over here or not? So I don't want to actually work forwards. I want to work backwards. So let's say I want to delete all my keyframing. So I'm going to go to, the quickest way to delete all keyframing that you've done is to click the stopwatch, because the stopwatch is used only when you're initializing keyframing or when you're going to wipe out all the keyframes that you've done on a certain property. So I'm going to click the stopwatch for position. That's going to wipe out all the position keyframes. Click the stopwatch for scale. That wipes out the scale keyframe. So and because my playhead was on a keyframe or at a place where my scale was at 100%, it's maintaining that now my object is back to 100% as a constant value. And then I'm going to click the stopwatch for rotation, and I happen to be at a point in my timeline where rotation values are set at 0, so everything will just be zeroed out as at a constant. Okay, so working backwards now. Now we want to think about how we want everything. Well, we know that we want all the elements to end up in this layout, this form, because you spent some time coming up with your layout in Illustrator. You want it to end up that way. So I'm going to move my playhead to kind of an end position in this. Let's see how long this duration is. It looks like the duration of this timeline happens to be like 9 seconds. If we go to composition settings, you can see that my duration for this animation is set to 10 seconds. Normally by default it's set to 30 seconds. I'm not sure. I guess the last thing that I did probably was 10 seconds. If you want to set your duration to a shorter duration or longer duration, you can always come to your composition settings. Remember, you go up to composition at the top, composition settings, or Command K on a Mac, Control K on Windows, and then you come to the duration field, and this is time code. Duration is measured as time. It's displayed as time code. So you don't have to type in all this punctuation, but let's say if I wanted a 25-second duration, then all I'd have to do is I can double click or triple click this number to highlight it all, and then I just put 2500, and you see I'm not typing in punctuation, but it's figuring out that the time code that I want is 25 seconds, and then when I click outside, it'll set it up in the time code format. Let's say I wanted it to be 1 second and 30, well, let's say 1 second and 15 frames. So how would I type that in? I could triple click this, and then I could type 1 5 for 15, and then 0 0 for placeholders for the frames. So that will end up as 1 second and sorry, no, that's not seconds, right? That's 1 minute and 15 seconds and 0 frames. So when I click outside, it applies that as the timecode format. But I like it at 10 seconds, so I'll just make it 10. So I do 1 0 and then 0 0 for the placeholders for the frames. Click outside, and that's what I've got, 10-second duration, which that's what it was before, so I don't have to click OK. I could just cancel and leave it alone. 10 seconds is a pretty good, I think is a good time for good duration. If you find you need more time, you can always go up to composition settings and change the duration of your timeline. Lengthen it, shorten it, whatever you want. Okay, so let's say I want everything to come in by maybe a middle point. And you could also jump your playhead. Like I could go exactly to 5 seconds by clicking on this number and typing in 5 0 0. And then if I press return, it will jump my playhead right to the 5 second mark. And let's say that's where I want everything to come in and hold at that point. Or no, maybe a little before that. So I go a little before. So I just drag a little before. Now I'm at 4. Okay, so I want to hold position for all of these layers. So I'm going to close up this layer. I'm going to select the top layer. I'm going to hold shift and click on the bottom layer so all the layers are selected together. And I'm going to press P to bring up position on all of them. While they're all selected, I'm going to just click the stopwatch in any one of the positions on any one of the layers, and all the all the position properties on all layers get activated, get a keyframe, and the stopwatch has been initialized on all the layers now with just one click, which is pretty cool, right? Okay, so that's just saying that's how I want everything to end up, and it is stored. Those position values are now stored in those keyframes. So now I can mess everything up and not worry about it. So I can move my playhead to the beginning of the timeline, drag it to the beginning, and I can, if I click outside here, it'll deselect everything. And then I could say, okay, the logo, I wanted to move the logo like off screen like that. And let's see, what else? What's the next thing? The business name, maybe that will come in. Let's see, how do I want that to come in? That can come in, maybe that will just come in like from top to bottom like that. Or I could, maybe I'll undo that move and I could just, if I wanted to move in a straight line, I could adjust the Y value and just drag it straight up. And notice as I start moving these, and I can hold spacebar when I activate my composition panel. When I hold spacebar now, and you activate a panel by clicking on it, and you see there's a blue line around the panel, a fine blue line, that means it's active. Now when I hold spacebar, I can toggle into my hand tool and click and drag to move around. And then when I select the logo, you can see that because I have a starting keyframe and an ending keyframe that's position property value, it creates this motion path. And when you select the keyframes on a motion path, if you look really closely, what you'll see is that the keyframe that's selected is going to be displayed as a box that's highlighted, and all the little dots along the motion path represent all the in-between frames that are generated from one keyframe to the next to create that smooth transition of movement. And then there is also, you'll also notice if you look really closely, there are these bigger, rounder circles that are actually attached, that are actually kind of attached to each of the keyframes. And if you want to create a curve for your object to move along, you can grab onto the circle, the bigger circle, and it's actually a handle. So you can pull a curve and create a kind of an interesting curve for your object to move along. So now, instead of my object just moving in a straight line, it's going to move along this kind of S curve. So we'll see how that's going to come in like that. So now the logo comes in like that. Okay, and then maybe I want certain things to come in at different speeds. So I might move my playhead in a little ways and then have things moving and then start and make changes to other layers at different places in time along my timeline. So I move my playhead in here, about here, let's say, and then, okay, what's gonna come in next? We've got lines. Let's see, how are the lines gonna come in? The lines might just move up, or they might come in from the side. Lines, I'll just move the lines like they're moving, like they're gonna come up like that. That could be cool. So I move the lines off, and then let's see, light spirals. See how light spirals, I might drag on the position value for light spirals. Maybe light spirals can move off like from the side. So there come. And if I change my mind and I say, well, light spirals are just taking too long, I could always, see this is the keyframe for light spirals. I could always scoot the keyframes closer together, and then that's going to change the speed and make things move faster when keyframes are closer together. So now those spirals are moving in faster. And then let's see. I'm going to go down to the back bar, to this. I'm turning it off, on and off. Maybe I want this to move in from the side at a certain point. Like kind of like underlining the bright bloom. So maybe after the bright bloom graphics comes in, then or maybe just as it's coming down, then I decide to have the back bar move in. So right about here, then I adjust the position of the back bar. I'm just gonna go to the X coordinate, the first numbers, the X, and drag it to the left, to the left, to the left, like Beyonce says. Move it to the left, and then we'll see how, ooh, I like that. So that kind of comes in like it's underlining things. And then let's see, so those spirals come in that way. And then where are my other spirals at? Dark spirals here. Did they move yet? Dark spirals did not do anything yet. So let's say dark spirals, after they come in, so I'll move my playhead where I want them to start doing something. Maybe in dark spirals I can drag out, like, so they're gonna come in from the top right down. So some spirals moving in from the bottom, some spirals moving in from the top, and then we have circles, big circles. So the idea is you want to start with everything as a clear screen, and then you want to decide how you're going to have each of the elements come into frame one after the other to build into an interesting animation. So I still got circles there, and I've still got some things that I want to move off frame. Karen liked my to the left joke. All right. Okay, so little circles here, I'm going to turn those off and on. Let's see how those are going to come in. little circles. They might kind of just rain in from top to bottom. So I'll move my playhead somewhere and then adjust. Maybe little circles can just come from the top. I might grab onto these handles so that the little circles kind of move in on a curve, maybe like just a C curve like that. I'm just dragging those handles so they just kind of come in like that. And then finally some other circles, big circles need to come in. So I'm adjusting big circles so I can just move those off, maybe curve, and big circles come in. And I watch how things are coming in. Maybe I don't like the way that they're crossing the path of the spiral here, so I could coordinate it differently so that if the big circles move a little faster, then they won't cross paths. So they can come in without quite meeting there. So they're coming in a little sooner. That works. And then we have the, let's see, where's the end curve here? That's this little cap there. Let's say that should come in at a certain point. There's no right or wrong for it when it's going to come in, but let's say
Also the big spiral.
yeah, and the big spiral needs to come in too. So end curve, I'll move that out maybe out to the right. So that just kind of pops on at the end, or as the back bar is moving in, then that one comes in. And then the big Madeline, very perceptive. Notice I still have one more thing left, because when you put your playhead at the very beginning, you want to see a clear screen. I want to make sure I'm fitting everything, or zoom out, make sure that nothing's showing at the beginning. That creates a nice clean beginning. So this spiral, let's see, when's that spiral gonna come? So that could come in at a certain point. So it's just gonna, maybe I want it to go out like that and just kind of drop in. And then maybe I want things to be spinning. So that spiral here, where is that? It should be called big spiral. Big spiral. Yeah, big spiral, it's come in at the beginning, so there's some time for it to be spinning. So if I want big spiral to spin, I can press R or Shift R if I want to bring it up with position, and decide when I want it to start spinning. Maybe as it's coming in right here, it starts spinning. So I click rotation where I want it to, I put my playhead where I want it to start, maybe a little bit sooner here, like right there. So I click on the stopwatch for rotation to initialize keyframing. I move my playhead forward, and maybe I'll have it continuously spinning after everything stops there. So I go a little bit past that end keyframe for position, and I say I want it to be spinning 7 times. So I click on the number, press and type 7, press return, and now a new rotation keyframe appears, and now it's just going to be spinning around as it comes in. Maybe that's a little too much. Maybe I want it to stop actually at the point where everything stops. Maybe I want it to stop. So I moved the rotation keyframe back to line up with the end position, but now it's going to be going way too many, just too fast, because it's spinning so much. Actually, I think I want it to keep going, but I don't want it to be spinning that many times. That maybe I want it to go slower. So I could go to the end keyframe and adjust it. So I can click the arrow to go to the end keyframe on rotation, and instead of 7 times, maybe I want it to just rotate 4 times. So I change the 7 to 4 and press return, and I've just changed that end keyframe. So now in the duration of time between from the first keyframe to the next keyframe on rotation, it should rotate slower because it doesn't have to do as many rotations. That's more like it. And then let's see what else.
I got a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now so you have all your elements, doing their little dance right here, and at the end of the dance, everything forms up.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now I'm just kind of wondering, that bar going across, can that have, like, say, a picture placed on it?
Like a photo?
Yeah, a photo or just, whatever besides just green.
Yeah, you can import images right into After Effects. If you want to have an image appear, a photo of something there.
Well, I mean, just the shape itself. I mean, just, can that
just
be
within?
done in Illustrator and brought over into After Effects?
Yeah, you could have, you could use a shape in Illustrator on top of a photo and create what's called a clipping mask so that the image shows inside of that shape. And then that could be a layer that you bring in when you import the Illustrator file into After Effects, and it'll come in like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I got an idea. I just noticed that my icon, that I made was not too readily to be adjustable. So I have to figure out some things. I'm just wondering right now.
Oh, I wonder, maybe I should, I was thinking maybe I could show how to do that, but I'm not sure if I have a photo on me at the moment.
Well, you don't need to do that right now. I just kind of wondering, if that's how you do it. You do it in Illustrator first, and then bring it over on into After Effects to do any adjusting and stuff like that. I just wondered.
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely do that. So yeah, maybe I can demo that when I find an interesting photo to put in there. That'll be cool. Good ideas. Okay, so things are coming together here, and I might want to have some other spirals kind of spinning around. So maybe the light spirals, I can press rotation or shift R to bring up, and then let's see how they look if I have the light spirals come in spinning. So I can click the stopwatch where I want spinning to start, and then move the playhead forward, maybe just to the end keyframes, and then let's say I want them to rotate 2 times, so I change the 0 to 2, and then now I have these spirals should be kind of spinning around now. Or I could have the circles. Let's see. Where are those circles? Big circles. Yeah, the big circles. Maybe I want those to spin. So I do Shift R. And maybe as they're coming in, I click the stopwatch for rotation. Move the playhead forward, maybe go a little past, maybe I'll line up with this other keyframe out here, and then have those big circles rotate maybe 2 times. So that'll be, so they're just spinning like that. Or I could move the rotation, I can also select by dragging a marquee around multiple keyframes, and I could scoot the keyframes around to start earlier or later. Let's move them a little later. So they'll just come in spinning like that. And then if I want to have like a tagline, I could add text in After Effects and then animate the text. So now I have everything coming in, and then I want to have some text come in. So I take my type tool, and I'm just gonna click on the top layer first, so the text should go above whatever layer I have selected. So I take my type tool, and so there's a type tool up here, you see, horizontal type tool, or you could try the vertical type tool, but I'm going to use the horizontal type tool. But if you click and hold, you can switch between them. I'm going to just go with the horizontal type tool, and then I'm going to click. Oh, I see my cursor, it's huge. I need my cursor to be I need my font to be a lot smaller. So here's the character panel. As soon as you click with the type tool, the character panel will appear, and all my character controls, and there's my font size. I could click the drop down and choose something a lot smaller, like there's 12-point font, but you could also drag on the font number to choose the size you want. Now it's 16-point. Okay, and then I type out my tagline. So what was my tagline? Where vision comes to, wait, what was it? I want to get it right. So I'm going to go to, actually I have it on my other header. So let me open my other header, has it where vision comes to life. And if I want to match that font, click on that. That is the Cormorant Garamond. Or I could choose something that matches my what I have in my business cards too, because you want to be as matching as possible. So I can open my business card document and see what font did I use in my business cards, and maybe the font that I use in my business cards would be good. It's Athalis, and Athalis does have italic, so I could try Athalis. Let's try Athalis. So in After Effects, I could put in for the I could just click on the font name and type Athalis and choose italic. And then I can type that out, which was where vision comes to life. So I'm going to just type that. Where, oh, I can barely see this color, so I'm going to highlight it and change the color. Or I could use the eyedropper and choose a color here, like this green color, or maybe darken it up a little bit. Say okay, and then I'm going to type where vision comes to life. And then I take my selection tool, and once I'm on my selection tool, I can move this around to where I want it to be. Let me zoom in here. Okay. All right. And I wanted to also show you that when you're using Illustrator, objects from Illustrator, since we're working in vectors, we want to get the benefit of working in vectors, so that if you do decide to scale something up really big, you don't want it to end up looking pixelated. So there's a switch that you can turn on, which, let's see, that it looks, I call it the snowflake, but it's the continuously rasterized switch, which means it's going to be drawing data continuously from your vectors. So if, for example, let's say, let me bring up scale here on my logo. I'm going to press S. And let's say I scale this up really huge. You see how it's all pixelated as I'm scaling it larger than its actual size? See that? You guys all see that? Because I scaled it up.
Yes.
Yeah, because I scaled it up larger than 100%. And everything, once you import from Illustrator to After Effects, everything is converted over to pixels. But if you want the pixels if you want the process of converting from vectors to pixels is called rasterization. If you want that rasterization process to update continuously, so it's going to draw the data from the vectors and stay clean and crisp, then you need to turn on the continuously rasterize button, which is, I call the little snowflake here, and you click on that, under that column for that button on the little empty box under that little snowflake looking icon. You click in that little box to turn that on, and voila. See, I'm going to turn it off. See pixelation? You see all, it looks really soft and low resolution, but then you click it on and everything stays nice and sharp and clean at any size, which is awesome. And you can do that to all your layers. If you select the top layer, hold down shift, and shift click the bottom layer, you can select all your layers and you can turn that on all of them. So in case, that's if you're gonna be moving, if you're gonna have anything scale really large, or if you're using 3D animation, if you're gonna have objects moving forward like up close, then it's gonna be helpful to keep the resolution nice and sharp. So you can turn that on, that switch on. But let's say I go back to, let's see, so that, now that's huge. So I'm going to press S to bring up scale and go back to 100. Let's see, okay, so now the flower comes in. Maybe I want to have it spinning as it's in here, so I click, I think I like it scaling too, so maybe I click stopwatch and then have it get bigger and then move forward and go down smaller and bigger and move forward, go smaller and bigger and smaller, and then maybe I want it to be spinning too, so I can press Shift R to bring up rotation, click the stopwatch, have it spin a duration of times, maybe 5 times, and now it's doing its little dance there, and then it stops. And then I want where vision comes to life to do something, and I want it to start I want it to start off, like, so that I don't want it to start on screen. I want it to, maybe I want each letter to fall into place, or each word to fall into place. So an easy way to do that might seem a little complicated at first is using what's called text animators. But trust me, text animators make your life a lot easier. It looks like it's pixelated, but that's because I'm zoomed way in right now, and maybe my preview, if I stretch my preview panel out, we could see if what the resolution is set to. Like if I go full, no, that doesn't make a difference. It's on auto. Okay, so that's fine. All right, so where vision comes to life, I want that to animate. So this is a text layer. It's gonna have some different properties than what my Illustrator layers had in it. So when you flip open the layer, you'll see the properties it has. So not only does it have the transform properties that the Illustrator layers have, but it also has special properties for text. So if I open up the text properties, you'll see that across from the word text here, you'll see this nifty little button that looks like a play button next to the word animate. This is how you add a text animator so that you can use this to enable you to animate each character one by one, or each word one by one, or whatever, each line one by one, depending on what you want to do with your text layer. So I'm going to click animate and decide what I want to animate. So I'm going to click the button, and let's say I just want to animate the opacity of the text. So I would add opacity. And then what it adds is it's added this new little property called animator 1, and it has this little section called range selector 1, which I'll get into in a moment. And then it gives me an additional opacity value that's separate than the opacity that's within the transform properties that come along with the layer. So the opacity on the layer is going to be set to 100%, but then I'm putting an opacity that's going to override that, that's going to be set to whatever I want to set it to here. So if I want it to be like I want the text to hardly show up, I can bring the opacity all the way down if I want, or partially down to a lower number. So let's say I have it set at 21. You can tell that there's an opacity change there, right? You can barely see the text, right? Okay, so if I click open the range selector, then you'll see that when I select the start, there's a start bracket here, and there's an end bracket at the end of the text. Start and end, and that bracket, I can drag on it. See, as I'm dragging on that start bracket, as I drag the start bracket character by character through, it's revealing each character in full opacity. What's within the start to the end, and what's in between the start and the end bracket is going to be showing my opacity change overriding the true opacity of the layer, right? And this is how we create animation character by character. Whoops, I don't want to move that. So that's the start bracket I'm dragging on. And the start bracket starts with a value of 0% at the beginning of the text layer. And as it moves forward, I'm going to drag it forward by dragging on the number this time. It can go forward all the way to the end position, which then will be at a value of 100%. And that's closing the bracket. So when the brackets are closed at the end, then it's revealing the text at full opacity. I'm going to go back to the beginning. Then the end bracket, I could also move. Its end bracket is at 100%, is the value that it's at. That means that it's at the end of the text. As I drag to the left, I'm moving that end bracket from 100 to 0. And again, as it meets the start bracket, it's closing and hiding the opacity change that comes in with this animator. So I'm going to go to the end with it. I could also drag on the end bracket, but it's a little fiddly to do that. Okay, so then if I want to do an animation where each character is going to like be revealed one at a time, which property should I animate, you think? Should I keyframe? Start or end? Or opacity down here? There are a lot of stopwatches to choose from, right? Does anyone have any idea? Well, I'm gonna keyframe the start value. So I'm gonna put my playhead where I want to be, where I want this animation to begin. So I'm just gonna drag my playhead through, we call it scrubbing, to kind of see where do I want my tagline to come in? Do I want it to come in before my, should I have it come in before the title of my business comes in, or after, do you think? For a tagline, you want it to just come in after the name of the business comes in. So Bright Bloom Graphics drops in, and then sometime after that, not too long after, but a little time after, then I want where vision comes to life. Bright Bloom Graphics, where vision comes to life, because that's the order you would read it in, right? So I would click the stopwatch on start to initialize where my playhead is, because I found the location I want in my timeline to begin. So I click the stopwatch, and then I move my playhead forward a duration of time, however long I want it to take, for the start bracket to move from its start position at 0% to the end position at 100%, closing the brackets, revealing character by character, revealing the text at full opacity. So I just wanted to show you with the opacity down a little bit so that you could see kind of how that works. But it really, what you want is to have the opacity completely at 0. So I'm going to adjust the opacity now all the way down. So you see nothing between the start and the end bracket until the animation starts, and then it writes it out where vision comes to life. So that's how it's doing that. It's just, and if I want more of a typewriter look, I can get a little advanced here. I can open up advanced, and in the advanced section, this is all part of the text animator. In the advanced section, I can bring down the smoothness here, smoothness property, and just bring it all the way down to 0 so that there's no smooth transitioning from character to character. Then it's more like a typewriter. And I can make it take longer by moving the keyframes apart from each other, and then have each letter kind of looking like it's typing itself out one at a time. But I think I like the smoothness, so I'll bring the smoothness back so that each letter kind of fades in one after the other. That's kind of cool. Maybe I want it to go a little faster, and maybe I want to not only have opacity, but maybe I want to have position too. Have each character move in from a different position. So if I want to add another property to this animator, I can go to the add button, click the add button here, that's right across from where it says animator 1, which is what I brought in when I clicked on animate here. And I can go to property and then add another value change like position. So add position, and it should add position to the animator at the bottom. It adds, let me just close up advanced so you can see. So it's adding position. So now between these keyframes where the start and the end bracket are the start bracket moves through the text, I can also make an adjustment on position. So if I can adjust the X value or the Y value so that actually I start the text out of frame. So now, let's see what that's going to look like. Now it should look like each letter is moving up from the bottom of from outside of the frame into place. You might be able to see that better if I make the opacity not change. Let's see if the opacity is all the way up to 100. There. Now you can see or I could remove opacity. I could take opacity off by selecting it and pressing delete. Now it's only position that's changing. Maybe I want rotation, so I can go to the add button and add property rotation and have it, let's say each letter rotates 5 times before it lands into place. So I just adjust 5 times, just change 5 times there. So now, and I'm not keyframing position and rotation, I'm only keyframing the start bracket. So as the start bracket moves through the text, it's transitioning each character one by one from its original state to its animation, to whatever I've changed property values for it in the animator. And that's what creates the transitioning. You can't really, can you see the characters kind of rotating into place? Maybe I want to add scale. So I click add, property, scale, make the letters get really big. Scale them really big. Let's see, even bigger, like that. So they're so big and they're moving into place. But now I've made them so big that I need to adjust the position down lower so they don't show. And now let's see what they look like. See, now each letter kind of is falling into place one at a time. But that kind of looks silly. So if I want to get rid of scale, I can select scale and press delete. And now that scale changes and is no longer happening. If I wanted to see what that looks like with the entire word, I can open up advanced. And instead of per character, which is under advanced, based on characters, I could switch that to words. And now we can see that each word is the one that's going to move in. One at a time. Hey, but why isn't rotation working? It's funny. It doesn't look like it's rotating anymore. When it's just words. Maybe if it rotates more times, let's see. Interesting. Well, rotation doesn't look like it's doing anything, so I can delete that and now it's just each word is moving in by one at a time, and it's just position. Position is the value that changes. I can move those closer together so that it comes in faster. But I think I like it character by character, so I can open up advanced and go back to based on and change it from words to characters. And now each character will kind of write itself out. So it starts with the characters not showing, and then each character writes itself out using the text animator, and it's using position right now. But I want to just quickly show you a little bit I know we're running out of time, but I want to show you a little bit about 3D. What happens with 3D? Because 3D is really cool. So if I wanted, let's say, maybe I want everything to kind of move off in 3D space, then I need to make my layer into a 3D layer. Let me just do it with just this logo layer here for starters. So I'm going to select the logo layer and I'm going to press P to bring up position. And then let's say I want everything to just kind of hold for a moment up to this point here when the flower stops rotating, right about there. And so I hold the position by clicking the add remove keyframe, and that's going to just hold the position in that duration of time. And then now, let's say at the end, I want the flower to just move forward in 3D space. So I am going to do that by converting this layer into a 3D layer. So notice there are these different switches up above, and there's one that looks like there's one that's labeled by a 3D cube. That is this whole column is the switch to convert a layer to becoming a 3D layer. So I want my logo to be a 3D layer now, so I click the switch and it puts a little cube in the little switch box. So now this layer has been switched to becoming a 3D layer. So when you switch a layer from 2D to 3D, now we no longer have just 2 coordinate values for position, but we have 3. We have X, Y, and what's the third one, you think? What do we call our third dimension?
Z?
Right, the Z-axis. So this is the Z-axis. It will let you move further away in 3D space or forward in 3D space. It used to seem like it was. So as I'm adjusting the Z along a negative value, it should look like it's coming towards us. And then with the 3D layer, we can rotate in 3D space too. So we have X rotation to rotate along the X-axis, and I can adjust the angle, and you'll see when it's rotating along the X-axis, it'll look like it's like chicken rotating along a rotisserie. That's the rotating around the X-axis. And then if I adjust the Y, then you see rotating around the Y-axis. Looks like I'm going to make the X back to 0. Rotating around the X-axis, rotating around the Y-axis is kind of like a door opening and closing kind of movement. I'm going to make that go back to 0, 2 on the Y-axis. And then you also have a new property that's added called orientation, where you have X, Y, and Z rotation angles all on one property. So that's X, the first number, then Y, and then Z is actually rotating kind of flat. It looks like a flat rotation, it's ironic because you're rotating around the Z-axis. That's the flat rotation actually, but you wouldn't think so because that's the third dimension, but that's the way it works with rotation. Okay, so now let's say I want it to just kind of, the logo to sort of move towards us in 3D space. So now I can do that with position here. And I started, keyframing's already initiated, so I don't need to click the stopwatch again. I can move my playhead forward a duration of time, however long I want it to take for the flower to move out of frame, and I can drag the flower like along the Z-axis, but I want to kind of keep it here with looking at it longer, so I'm adjusting along the X and then Y maybe, and then let's see, let's go. I want it to kind of really look like it's coming forward, so I'm just going to keep pushing it back along X and adjusting it along Y, and then moving it along Z axis so that it's going to look like it's really coming towards us and getting close to us. So I'm just moving it along the Z. When I'm moving along the Z, it kind of wants to just move it to the left, but I'm pushing it back to the right with the X. And then let's say I just keep moving it till, ooh, everything turned yellow because we've just dove right into the eye of the flower. So now it looks like it's just coming toward, oh, actually it was yellow, and then everything got yellow, but then we ended up in, it moved like right past us. So that's an animation where it just kind of comes towards you and goes out to outer space. Let me just adjust it a little bit. Down. Yeah, so it's coming towards us and going out of here. So that's how you might move something in 3D space. I might even have it rotate. So I could do like maybe rotation. Y rotation might be cool. So I click the stopwatch to start, and then maybe just have it kind of tilt one way or the other. Like that, or like the other way. Let's see. See what that looks like. So it's coming and then rotating. No, maybe not. Oh, maybe. That could be interesting. No, actually I'll get rid of the rotation. So I'll click the stopwatch to remove the rotation, and then it'll just come. So let's see how this is gonna go. So it's gonna go out like that. And then Bright Bloom graphics, maybe that gets bigger too. So after the logo moves closer, then Bright Bloom can come out. Let's see, Bright Bloom is the business name. Press P for that and make that a 3D layer by clicking the switch on that. Now Bright Bloom graphics is a 3D layer. But let me just show my logos, keyframes too, and maybe that moves in. And then right after that moves out of frame, then I want, maybe I'll go a little bit sooner. After that comes out of frame, then Bright Bloom graphics can move. So then I can click the add keyframe for position to start that, and then move my playhead forward, and then have it move forward and along Z, which it looks like it's just moving to the side, but if I push it back to the middle by adjusting the X axis and then keep dragging it, it's like you have to go both ways. It used to not be like that so much. You just adjusted the Z axis mainly, and it looked like it was getting close to you. And maybe I need to adjust Y down a little bit. Not that far down, just a little bit here. And then adjust Z, so it should look like it's coming towards us. Coming towards us. And then over a little bit with X. down a little with Y. Not that far down, let's see. A little bit higher. And then, so I want to kind of keep it centered. That'll be nice because then it'll be nice to look at it really get big. So I'm just adjusting X and Y and Z until the text kind of gets out of frame. A little higher. So then it goes till it goes all the way out. And then let's see what that looks like. So it's just gonna come towards us. Get really big. But maybe it should go a little slower. So I stretch the keyframes apart from each other. And maybe the logo should happen sooner. And then Bright Bloom Graphics gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Maybe it should actually be go a little bit, maybe if I go in the middle and then I adjust it a little more this way. It's added a new keyframe. Let's see what that looks like. There, then it will kind of push it more into the middle. And it's okay, it's stuck on. I'm gonna preview it at a lower resolution so it'll go faster, but it'll look pixelated. So it's at third just to play back faster, because this After Effects takes a lot of rendering power and it stalls for playback, unfortunately. So you never really, it's hard to see what the final result will look like until you actually render a video out, because just previewing takes some time unless you really lower the resolution when you're previewing. But you can see how it's like moving in 3D space. Okay, so we're out of time, so I'm gonna wrap this up tomorrow, finishing the animation tomorrow, and then I'll also be showing you how to make your animation for YouTube and getting into launching your YouTube channel. But that should get you started, so at least you have some tools, some techniques to get started on.